Hello everybody, and welcome back to my podcast, Headstrong, where I sit down and have an engaging conversation with a well-known individual about their upbringing, their career, and notably their struggles that have helped them shape who they are today. On this week's episode of Headstrong, I was so lucky to get to have a chat with Danny Cipriani. Fresh off his win as Player of the Year this season, we got to discuss this year at Gloucester as a rugby player, as well as the more controversial aspects of his life that have landed him in some heat in the media. Danny and I got to have a very honest and open discussion about how he's dealt with these pressures and how much he's grown as a person. So I really hope you enjoy this episode of Headstrong. Mr. Danny Cipriani, thank you very much for coming to talk to me. Or I've come to you, but thank you very much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
Congratulations on your Player of the Year award. That must be, I don't know, a relief, but also, do you feel like you've really earned that this season and you've earned even more respect from the players in the whole of the Premiership as well?
I feel it's difficult taking individual awards in a team sport, because for me, rugby is the ultimate team sport. You know, there are so many facets of the game that make it operate and make it go well for you that, for one person to get it, it's a bit uncomfortable, a bit humbling, whatever you want to use in that way. But, it's nice to receive it, and I guess it means that I'm doing my job in terms of playing well and trying to prepare the team as best I can. But for me, it is really a team award because, we don't get to do what we're doing on the field individually unless we operate together.
So you're in your 30s now. Sorry to mention it.
No, I like it.
But, so do you feel like you've grown in a sense of maturity, your mentality's changed, and your work ethic has got better as you've got older, and you've learned how to approach your game now?
I think what has happened with me in the story along the way and the narrative that I guess has been created by the media, and there's been times that I've probably played into it or made mistakes which make it easy to write about that narrative. But, the work rate side of things, the work ethic, that has always been my focus. When I was younger, I felt like I'd lost a bit of speed because we had done so many weights from 15 to 17. So I went and found a sprint coach, worked with her, got all my speed back and some. I went and sourced one of the best physios in the planet, who I see regularly. I've got an unbelievable guy who I met, 25, 26, I'm sure we'll talk about, Steve Black, in terms of mentality and focus. Just whenever I feel like there's something that I need to work on or have some self-awareness, I will go and source someone who is an expert in that area. And that's just the way that my mindset's been. And as you get older, you get more and more self-awareness and you realise where you can improve. Everything that happens every day is you can step back and look at it and think, what is that situation teaching me? Why has that come up today? What can I learn from it? How can I keep growing or improving? And I guess that's been heavily my mentality for the last 6-7 years since I've been back from Australia. And it's been a big focus on mine moving forward.
Gloucester is now obviously your home for the next 3 years. A year ago today, you signed your deal with Gloucester. Do you feel that the infrastructure that Gloucester has provided has, your Player of the Year award has come from such an incredible infrastructure here at Gloucester? Or do you think it could have happened elsewhere, but it's actually really helped you being here?
I feel the individual award is maybe an accumulation of the last 6-7 years in terms of consistency and how I've been trying to play. At Sale, I learnt a lot of important facets of rugby in terms of playing on the back foot, trying to win games when perhaps you don't have parity or you don't have that front foot ball. Then I was at Wasps, blessed with a lot of star-studded names. And, we played some great stuff. But then, at Gloucester, I feel we've got some great team unity and team harmony, especially with the coaching staff and the playing staff combined. I think there's a great mix here. And I know obviously when you're in an environment, you always want it to be better, improved. But this is an environment where I can truly see that everyone is working together.
Just mentioning the coaching staff there, obviously you've talked about Johan and David Humphreys as well in the press before as well, how incredible they've been. But I don't know from the outside what is so unique about the play to inspire attitude of Johan. What makes that so inspiring for you as a player and also the team to get behind him and say, right, and look where you are now. You're going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think what Johan does is he cares individually about the players, about them growing as people, not just as rugby players. I guess you can stand up in front of the group and talk every week about what you can do better on the field, what area we can work on and all things like that. But I guess he just tries to take moments and sees the energy of the group or with the mood of the group. And he tries to assess it, and then he'll give us stories, talk about things in terms of us sort of hopefully having to have a think and develop us as individuals as opposed to just rugby players. And, if we're growing off the field, if our mindset's growing, if we're learning, you're obviously going to become a better rugby player as well. That's a heavy part of what he does. But it's just the whole round and the awareness that he brings to it, which I think is very unique in terms of coaches.
How important is it to you and Gloucester to have such a loyal fan base? I would say, honestly, some of the Gloucester fans are some of the most loyal in the Premiership, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think
mad.
It's been amazing. You've always felt that when you were playing away at Gloucester, for myself, playing at the Shed or playing at King's Home. And now, this season, my first season, obviously being part of Gloucester, and, they've fully taken on everyone. There's people that come over from South Africa, it's been their first season, and they've embraced everyone in terms of how they've looked after the squad. And, we've tried to put our best foot out there and give them something to cheer about. And, I think it's such a great city for rugby because it's the main sport here. And I think there's some real solid people that come and support Gloucester, and it's like a coliseum when you go down there when it's a busy day, when it's packed out and you hear everyone cheering. So I'm very grateful to be playing in front of them.
Yeah, both on and off the field. I guess it really must help mentally as well, knowing that you've got the support of literally thousands of people, and not that there's any pressure on it at all, but just knowing what win or lose, they're there behind you on your back, which is great. I
think that's something that you can see within Gloucester players that have been here for so long, your Charlie Sharples, Billy Twelvetrees, your Ben Morgans, they desperately want to give something back to these Gloucester fans.
Yeah, they come through the ranks.
Yeah, they come through the ranks, and those people that have been here for a long time, their performance has stepped up this year. I think that is what everyone's focus has been. That's what that play to inspire message is, and I think that's what we're all trying to achieve.
So let me take you back to the start of the season, in fact, pre-season. You're in Jersey, and the altercation happens. Where does that put you mentally? How difficult is it to face that? Because the press seem to be painting this egotistical, macho rugby player, but actually deep down, I feel like there is definitely much more of a deeper person there. But how can you mentally cope with how the press and the tabloids are painting you when it might not necessarily be true?
Yeah, I feel things like that, you have to take it at face value. You understand the situation, When my team captain was there, he witnessed everything, and we know the truth, we know what happened, and to then see how it gets portrayed in the media, how they try and spice it up and what they do, that's their role, that's their job. I do think there should be more responsibility with the media in terms of, care to individuals in how they report stories and what they do, because, it's caused a lot of people difficulty over the years, a lot of mental struggles. But, luckily it wasn't my first rodeo in terms of having to deal with an altercation, or in something which was misinterpreted by the press. And it was something obviously I wish it hadn't happened, and I guess it was a reality check for me to just keep moving forward in terms of what I'm doing.
Did that make you want to focus more on your game? You were like, look, if this has happened at the start of the season, crikey, and now I really need to get, focus on the rugby here. Because, I only know what happened in the papers. You say you know what happened, as obviously.
Yeah.
But you mentally, you must have just gone, right, and now the switch must have gone rugby time.
The switch had gone first day being in training. It wasn't even then, I'd been in for 2 or 3 weeks before that. And there was a lot of work we'd put in to make sure we were moving forward as a team. It was a team night out, and,
Which happened all the time, might I add.
Yeah, I guess, and the whole thing ended up becoming very unnecessary. But, it was definitely something which I learnt from, and, it was just that situation. And for me, it's just making sure that when I get back, like you say, you focus on the rugby, whether you don't get picked in a squad, whether you don't don't get on with a coach, whether you have something which goes on, at the end of the day, your craft, your job is your main focus, and you need to make sure you go back and put everything into that. And I guess over the last 6-7 years, whether it be non-selection, whether it be whatever it might be, I like to feel like it almost spurs me on every time to go and perform and play better.
Well, I think in this 2018-19 season, you've certainly proved the critics wrong. And in fact, I mean, I know you keep saying it's only an individual award, but I mean, it is proof that, your 6-7 years of hard work have really paid off. So I think you should be really, really proud of that.
Oh, thank you.
Just talking about that though, so obviously, you're no stranger to the controversy, which you admit to, and it's happened in your life. You've been in the papers before with the bus concussion, the driving ban, and then Jersey as well. But how do you feel that some parts of what you do are overlooked? For example, you supporting charities, meeting fans, you're putting in all this time of your own personal time into the club and for good, and sometimes that part isn't actually reported.
Yeah,
is that quite difficult to accept, or is that also
maybe like a bit when I was younger? But now, when you do those things, it isn't for yourself or isn't for your own ego. You're doing it for others. You're doing it to try and hopefully brighten someone's day. Whether you go to a hospital visit or whatever it might be, lots of rugby teams do it. Whether you go coach kids, hopefully you go and brighten up a kid's day. Whatever it might be, you're doing it for them. It's not for a self reward. So, if it gets overlooked, it doesn't matter. It's how that individual took that moment, and it was how, hopefully, you conducted yourself on that day. So if you do things truly to give and truly for a selfless reason, then you're doing it with authenticity. So that's going to be the case, and you just have to make sure you keep going along and keep focused and keep working on that, and keep sticking to your message over and over again. And I've obviously, like you say, had my altercations, but I'd like to think that over the last 6-7 years I've had a lot of growth, and I'm making sure that I'm moving in the right direction.
With a number of other sports people, let's say, for example, have also had their fair share of media coverage for not necessarily the right reasons. You look at Freddie Flintoff in the Pedalo incident. You've got Alex Hales most recently with whatever that might have been, and then Ben Stokes with the punching outside the club as well. Do you think there is an unachievable amount of expectation for these sports people, or do you think it's actually just the unnecessary focus from the social media aspect and the media themselves?
I think partly, there's definitely responsibility on sportsmen, and we have to adhere to that. So there's times when we put hands up and things do go wrong. But there's also a social media backlash and a storm nowadays, which is someone makes a mistake and, people tweet or whatever they do, and you read the comments and you almost feel like the people writing have never ever made a mistake in their life. There needs to be some sort of empathy in terms of what's gone on, and the full picture that you read won't necessarily be the truth or exactly how it's reported. So just trying to look a little bit from both sides of it.
I think it is important to remember that, but the person behind the pen as well, like you say, is not a perfect person, So there's a number of things that occur, and there's certainly always two sides to an argument. Not that it's an argument, but two sides to the story at the very least.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily about being the perfect person for me. It's just like having that empathy with others, and as long as those people are making the right steps to move forward, to be, as best they can be a good role model, as best they can try and really make a difference within their sport and their immediate circle, then
okay, so that's interesting. So what attributes and qualities would you say describe Danny Cipriani?
What attributes and qualities?
What are your characteristics that aren't always necessarily picked up by the media, but that you hold close to yourself?
I guess empathy and compassion would be one. Constantly trying to work on myself, whether it be going over and beyond in terms of reading, having good guides or mentors or whatever it be, to make sure I'm still developing it as a man and being, the best on-field leader I can be, off-field leader I can be within my group, whether I can be someone who people can look at, who has made mistakes, who has gone through whatever they might have gone through, but has stayed consistent and got back on track and kept continually doing so. whether it be something, whether it be a big mistake of mine, whether it be a story the media have, exasperated or exaggerated, whatever it might be. And it's just about having that self-awareness and that it's that self-growth. And for me, it's, I'm in an era where we're in an era now where it's quite a fatherless environment. There's a lot of single-parent homes, and I grew up in that situation from 10 years old, and there was often times in rugby coaches I would pin a father figure type role on a certain coach. And early on I had it with Brian Ashton and Sean Edwards, and they gave me everything and I gave them everything because that's how it felt. And then as soon as coaches weren't giving that, it was an immediate trigger for me to, almost act up in a way. And that's for me to have that self-awareness and to keep growing so you don't keep having that trigger and dealing with that situation. And as you get older, I've learned to find ways to be my own man, develop in my own way, speak to the right people, go out and reach for it and keep developing, because that's all we can do is taking onus and responsibility of your life. And, there's been times I've had to do it under the media spotlight, whatever it might be. I've held my hand up, I've made mistakes. But, as long as you're moving forward, because at the end of the day, real life's different to the media life.
I think this season you certainly showed it as well.
Cheers, man.
So let me take you back to the beginning of your career, so back when you were 23, you said you suffered from depression. So I know it's a long time ago, but can you remember what brought that on and what those feelings were?
Yeah, it was going through, there was a shift in narrative in the media from the age of like 17 to 20 and 21. Everything I did was amazing. Everything in terms of what the media wrote about was amazing. I'd have an okay game, but they'd report as if I've been the best player ever.
Everything's covered in gold.
And I went through that phase, and at that age, you start almost you start riding it. You start riding the wave, as it were, the ups. So you start feeling great because of external opinions. And then broke my ankle, came back, took a bit of time to get back to form. I played like 40 minutes of rugby pre-autumn after breaking my ankle. Didn't have the best autumn series. Had good moments within it, but not the best autumn series overall. I'm 21, trying to lead a brand new team. There's a lot of factors that stopped me from being great in that situation and being the best leader I could be. It was a great learning curve. But then the narrative changed. It was, I played okay, didn't do well. It was a negative. So then from me riding that high wave, that high narrative, I'm now feeling the pain of the negative that I'm reading, because my mum's feeling it, my friends are feeling it, they read it. It's just like everything to them. So I'm then getting the knock-on effect of that. And then suddenly it just rides and goes more because they feel they've got a bit of a sniff. They've got a little bit of blood, wounded animal. Let's go for the kill. And that's almost what it felt like. So that's why I decided to go to Australia, move away, as well as my issues in terms of growing up without a father being around. I love my dad to bits, but he moved back to Trinidad when I was 10. That's fully fine. It was his decision. But, through some important years of my life, I didn't have those role models. So around that age, as well as going through all this, I'm starting to go through this process of like, why this and why that? And then I'm away in Australia. I'm on my own in terms of immediate family or anything like that. And then, it becomes quite a lonely place, and I start thinking about things, and then the narrative in the media's, trying to catch me out, trying to be as negative as possible. And there's times I've allowed it to be the case. There's times I've done things which, for me is just a normal thing, or just messing about, whatever it might be. When I was in Australia, and it gets reported and it's some big story and it's negative. So then again, it's another thing. And then I went through a very difficult time when I lost a good friend of mine in the off season when I was over in England, and it was just a lot. It was a lot to deal with. So, and I was just finding it difficult to verbalize what was in my mind. And that's when you end up having those feelings of tomorrow, I don't want to be here, or tomorrow there's difficulties, and it's like, how am I going to get through this? I'd rather just not be here.
Did you have those thoughts?
Yeah. That's what was going through. And then I was seeing a psychiatrist for a while. And it was good speaking to someone, but I didn't get, personally, I didn't get the feeling out of it that I needed. So then it was more about self-awareness and understanding and trying to go through situations. And I met a guy called Steve Black, who was amazing for me. in terms of the conversation we had. I met him, the first time I met him, we spoke for like 3.5 hours, and I could just tell immediately that this guy, subconsciously I've attached to him as a father figure, because that's just the way he is. And I've learnt so much from him in the last 6-7 years, constantly, giving me books to read, podcasts to listen to. And it's been phenomenal to keep learning that situation. And we started to ride those negative stories and just, continue what the focus is, continue being great, continue trying to be as best a leader as you can on the field, at different situations in your life. And, it was something which I really sort of started focusing on, which was my play and my work and learning off the field, which then didn't really give me time to feel down, as it were, because I had a goal to attain.
So you mentioned the negativity that your family were reading and your friends were reading, and they were feeling that, and therefore it was the weight on your shoulders. And then you found Steve, and you were able to talk to him, and you clicked with him, which is awesome. But what made Steve so much easier to talk to than, say, your family and all your friends that you could have spoken to? Because they were also going through something not similar, because I don't want to say that, but it's
different, because everyone who is immediately involved is attached, either emotionally, invested financially, or whatever it might be. There is an attachment there. The first time I met Steve, he didn't know me from Adam. He just knew me as Danny, and the way his persona and his energy was, I felt like we could talk. So you meet someone who has that about them, you do talk, and then you understand they're speaking their truth, and then you can speak your truth. And then that just goes a long way in terms of, growing a relationship. It's not always necessarily easy just to talk to family. It's something which you should do and try and talk to, but then it's also you're afraid of judgment from people within you. So it's as if we just need more empathy and compassion within this world entirely, and then people can have these conversations and speak and not be emotionally attached.
Do you think there's a social stigma on speaking out about if somebody's suffering?
I guess you build it up a lot more in your head. You build it up a lot more in your head in terms of what is that person going to think, what's going to happen. There's been times the media have wanted to write stories, and you build it up in your head about how bad it's going to be. But it's actually dealing with the situation. It's never as bad as you think it is, and it's being able to sit your family down, or sit whoever you want to speak to, and letting them know that you want to get some things off your chest. I want a judgment-free zone, and this is how I'm feeling, and hopefully you can get somewhere to move forward to. But I think internally, within your near circle who it is you can talk to. You must feel some type of connection or energy towards someone so you can actually go and have that conversation. And if not, hopefully there's enough things out on the internet to read about, to learn from, to have some self-awareness, to go and read, whatever it might be, to try and make sure that you can get yourself right, because, at the end of the day, it's all in your hands.
It's really important to say that the hardest part about any form of suffering mentally is the first part of actually coming out and saying you are suffering, and that you need to be able to speak to somebody. Is there anything in particular that you remember with Steve, any techniques or anything that comes to mind that really helped you get through that period where that made you kind of leave, go to Australia, but then what made you bounce back mentally? What made you stronger? Apart from just speaking to him, was there something that really stands out?
I think he was clever when you look back on it. He was very good at so I started logging a training diary, and within that training diary we'd talk about 3 good things I did in training, 3 things I want to improve on. Also, right at the bottom, how was my mood that day? How did I feel? And you start logging things, and then over the course of 7 days, say you train 5 times a week, you suddenly got 5 times, so you've got 30 entries into your diary, as well as every single day you've got, an emotion or a feeling page as well. So you've got 35 things, every week. You can look back on it. You can see progression. You can see how you felt, how you kept performing well, even in a day which you didn't feel great, or whatever it might be. So he almost really focused my mind into my profession, and I feel very fortunate to have a profession like rugby where, every week I can go out and start again. Every week is a new game. Every day is a new day of training. How can I get the most out of the day in training? And I appreciate it's different in different jobs, because you don't have the the luxury of that, maybe perhaps that excitement. I'm not sure, but it's about finding what you truly want to do, and whether that be working as you are, but then also getting something on the side where you can really focus on something which you can put all your energy into, something you love doing, and then really sort of log in that process of it, and then you can see some progression. Set yourself challenges, whatever it may be. You know, I'm like I said, I'm very fortunate to be in a profession where every single day I've got an opportunity to go and improve my mindset. So, you know, I think that's something which really helped me as a sportsman.
So you're the professional rugby player now, and you've got a few more seasons left. But like any profession or any sportsman, especially, the playing career is going to come to an end eventually. And you have talked about you wanting to help people at the end of your career. Have you not obviously thought about retirement yet, but have you maybe put any thoughts into where that might take you once you finish? Is it going to be training, helping out with kids, maybe in the media yourself, really, but fight back? I don't know. Have you had any thoughts about that?
I've had lots of thoughts over the last sort of 3 or 4 years about what direction we want to take it in. I feel like through the experience I've had in rugby and my life over the last 21 years, from the age of 10, it would be a waste if I can't try and help other sportsmen in that, especially young ones. It would be quite selfish of me not to speak on it, and hopefully someone might have a situation which they can relate to, and maybe might help one person, who knows. But I think that's something which I'd enjoy doing. I guess there's lots of different things that I'm excited about for after rugby.
It's always nice to have something to look forward to. Then.
Yeah,
I'm pleased that
it's definitely. I've got several things I'm very much looking forward to. I'm loving every day. I'm loving the challenge, and at the end of long seasons, you do look forward to those off seasons to get that hunger back. And what's been great about this year is when you're in those playoff rugbies, it keeps that excitement there. It keeps that buzz going. It keeps everything going for those last 3-4 months, and it's imperative that you push everything you can in season to try and make those playoff spots. And then from that, you need to try and have your best performances. But then after you get your off season, you get that hunger back after 3-4 weeks being away. You want to get back at it. And I guess, there'll come a time when I get those 3-4 weeks and I'll want to not get back at it. So it would be the perfect time to retire. And, I feel like that would be the end of this contract, probably when I finish. Sure.
So looking at the likes of James Haskell, who's retiring, there's a lot going on at the moment about rugby players retiring and making that transition into retirement. But there's also this big thing with Restart Rugby, and a lot of players who actually really struggle to get through that transition from playing into retirement. And in fact, 2 in 3 players struggle with mental health problems post retirement. Do you think do you think it's a massive issue and something that people still need to keep raising awareness about and coming around and supporting?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of that with all sports. You've put everything into your whole life from the age, whatever age you started playing, and then you started realizing potentially you could be professional. 15, 16, every single waking day is about your profession and what you're doing. You have a schedule, you have routine, and then suddenly it stops at 34, 35, and the world's moved around you. How much have you grown with it? How much have you learned along the way to put yourself in a good situation? I think there's a lot right now where hopefully people can keep learning themselves, set themselves challenges off the field. I know James is very busy with James Haskell's busy with the media and his podcast and his training. He's got a lot of aspects which he can put himself into. And it's just trying to keep yourself as busy, but setting yourself a challenge and realizing that you are just, you are who you are. So I'm Danny Cipriani. I'm not Danny Cipriani, the rugby player. This is what I'm doing for right now, and it's only going to set me up for what's going to be later in life. Like, this is a platform to move forward to make sure that you can go and do something else great. Just because every single waking day has been put into this sport, and your talent or your individual prowess, whatever it might be, has been channeled into a sport, it doesn't mean you can't take those skills and put it into business or put it into marketing or whatever it might be for someone else, or leadership, depending on whatever your skills are within that game. So it's just about having that stoic attitude on all of it, and finding something that you can attach to for afterwards.
Always looking forward, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. My dad would kill me if I didn't bring up England. I've got to talk about it. So obviously for a period of time, you being dropped by Eddie was in the headlines for a long time. But post-award, post 2018-19 season, do you feel like you're in the best place possible that you've ever been in your career as a rugby player? And do you feel like you've got a look in now and you're raring to go for Japan if you get picked?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's an accumulation of these last 6-7 years, and every year I've been trying to get better and improve. And every season, the narrative has been, it's his best season yet. So if I can keep doing that as a player up until the day I finish, then that's the type of legacy I do want to leave as a player. In terms of England, there's some unbelievable talent in this country, so you've got to go over and beyond to get picked, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. And there's challenges that are set, and I've got to try and achieve those and be the best I can be the best competitor I can be on the field. And if you do the business back end of the season, or have the consistency throughout the season, do well in training camp, whatever is laid out in front of you, you just have to do it to the best of your ability and keep learning along the way and enjoy the process. And selection's out of your hands ultimately. You just got to do everything you can.
I feel like you've certainly put in all the effort you can this season.
Yeah.
Look, Danny, mate, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me.
Cheers, man.
And I hope people find some inspiration in what you've said.
Awesome. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Enjoyed it.
Well, a massive, massive thank you to Danny for giving up such precious time in the build-up to the end of this season. It was a very humbling experience to get to chat with somebody who has experienced so much both on the field and in the public eye. If you like this episode of Headstrong, be sure to hit subscribe, like it, share it, tweet it, give us 5 stars, whatever you want to do. It just means so much that these episodes are getting an audience. So thank you so much to you, the listener, for tuning in. Thank you also to David Humphreys, Martin St. Quintin, Duncan Wood, Neil, Cozzy, and of course to Danny for being so open and honest in this episode. Tune in next week for another episode of Headstrong.